First tonight, US-led diplomatic efforts to end the war in Ukraine appear to have stalled. Donald Trump says he didn't want a wasted meeting as plans are put on hold for face-to-face talks with the Russian leader Vladimir Putin. There'd been vague plans for them to meet before the end of the month. The US president indicated that one of the sticking points was Moscow refusing to cease fighting along the current front line. This comes after Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky met Donald Trump last week, in which some sources suggest that the US leader pressured his Ukrainian counterpart to give up land that borders Russia, something President Zelensky has always pushed back on.
No, I don't want to have a wasted meeting. I don't want to have a waste of time, so I'll see what happens. But we did all of these great deals, great peace deals. They're all peace deals, agreements, solid agreements, every one of them. But this one, and I said, go to the line of battle, or the battlefield lines, and you pull back and you go home, and everybody take some time off, because you got two countries that are killing each other. Two countries that are losing 5,000 to 7,000 soldiers a week. So we'll see what happens. We haven't made a determination.
Donald Trump. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian capital suffered strikes from more Russian attacks overnight, according to the mayor of Kyiv. At least 7 people have reportedly been killed. For its part, the Ukrainian military says it struck a chemical plant in a southern part of Russia using Franco-British air-launched Storm Shadow missiles. It described that site as vital to Moscow's war effort. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from London by the author and international affairs analyst, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz. Dr. Laskiewicz, great to see you again. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. So from the point of view of the public, it seemed the stage was set. Donald Trump would travel to Hungary to meet Vladimir Putin to flesh out the details of a peace deal in Ukraine. But suddenly relations appear to have soured. Why do you think President Trump has decided to put those planned face-to-face talks with President Putin on hold? I mean, what's the backstory that you're hearing about that?
The real point is that the Russians are showing virtually no flexibility, none. They want their demands met, and they want it as a peace treaty. So the notion that you can have a present-day ceasefire, the Russians have ruled out, and therefore the entire plan that President Donald Trump had falls to the ground. And any meeting will be quite pointless until the Russians show some flexibility. Sure, they're okay about ceding, which they don't actually occupy north of the Dnieper, but that's about it. And to be quite honest, it's not worth a great deal, so therefore he quite rightly shelved the meeting.
And we understand that the Russians also cancelled a pre-planned meeting between Sergei Lavrov, their foreign minister, and Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State. Mr. Lavrov is thought to have told Mr. Rubio in a phone call that Russia would not accept, as you pointed out, freezing the front line in Ukraine. So after that reportedly tense phone call, do you think Mr. Trump heard something else from Vladimir Putin that made him decide not to go to Hungary after all? I mean, if so, what might that be?
To be quite honest, the very fact that the Russians are sticking to their demands has knocked the bottom out of President Donald Trump's strategy at present. There will be no stopping fighting. There will be no ceasefire. Russia has never wanted one and is unlikely ever to agree to one. And so therefore, from this point of view, the phone call at, if you like, a lower level simply confirmed what was known to Donald Trump, and that's why he called off the meeting. And there's not even a point in a lower level meeting, because the phone call said it all. Until Russia in some way feels it has to negotiate, or for that matter, Ukraine, nothing's going to come any of these visits.
So, I mean, I suppose one could argue that this is an attempt by the US to avoid further embarrassment by going to Hungary. Because, I mean, after that meeting in Alaska, Russia continued its attacks on Ukraine and in fact seemed to intensify them.
Yes, this is quite true. Russia is actually expanding its operations, and all this talk that Russia's on its last legs are showing up to be false. Russia is a huge country with enormous reserves and also it has many allies. And these attacks on Kiev, as you pointed out in your news report just before, are going to continue. The actual Russian strategy of just bombing Kiev, assuming that's the only thing, is of course not likely to succeed. Far more is the effect of capturing a town like Pokrovsk. But the fact of the matter is that Russia can carry on like this for a long time, and in fact may escalate the war outwards, because the war now in Ukraine is not actually holding back their making moves elsewhere. Hence, they did a nuclear drill just recently.
It's interesting, Dr. Laskiewicz, that the last time Donald Trump wasn't pushing for a ceasefire to allow talks to happen. I mean, so it sounds like in some ways he's moved the goalposts this time.
Donald Trump is not a man with any fixed ideas, and he's just trying one thing after another. And so from this point of view, he has tried to persuade, somewhat forcefully, President Zelensky to agree, and this failed. He's now trying to do something with Russia, and this has obviously failed. So I think he's realizing his dream there has gone. And one of the central problems, of course, is that he hasn't given Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. On the other hand, also his key threat that Ukraine could be destroyed by Russia is also wrong, as President Zelensky knows, because Russia is not going to use nuclear weapons on a country which it sees as part of Russia, namely Ukraine. They'll be first used in Poland if the war escalates out. And so therefore, from this point of view, there is no possibility of peace. I think, therefore, the visit to Israel is more important in Donald Trump's eyes. On the basis there, he can achieve something. And there he'll be pressing for an international recognition, international force, if you like, and so on, because there he can actually achieve something. And I think he's realizing that the Russia-Ukraine war, as it stands, is outside his powers.
Well, let's sort of explore that possibility that you were talking about, an international force. I mean, how do you think talks can take us can stand a chance at ending the war? I mean, it's now 3 years since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. What would you say to Donald Trump as a change of tack? Should he perhaps move troops into Ukraine? I mean, some hawkish Americans are suggesting that.
They are, but that's a vote loser straight away for President Donald Trump. One of the things that the Americans like about Donald Trump is that he is not prepared to risk a single American life for any of these wars, and therefore that's out. His key point is whether he's prepared to escalate the weapons at Ukraine's disposal. Please note, he is already helping Ukraine, although of course this is in a sense the last of Biden's aid, but it is still being helped. And the question is he prepared to escalate by missiles? If he is not, then there is no way that Ukraine can force Russia to do anything. But of course, the problem he also has if he goes up with Tomahawks is Russia can reply. Strictly speaking, it is possible for Russia to go non-conventional. One hopes not. And so I don't think President Donald Trump has much choice at present. No chance, I think, of a deal, and no choice but simply withdraw temporarily.
So, I mean, where do things go from here? Is this the end of negotiations or just another hiccup along the way?
I think the correct way of viewing it is that the negotiations will be shelved for a time. The key question is whether Russia can capture a town like Pokrovsk, whether Russia can or wants to do something about the Suwalki Gap to link up East Kaliningrad exclave with Russia itself. These are the two, I think, burning issues. And the other is whether the punishment, which is very much hyped by the Western media, that Ukraine is meting out in the sense of bombing industrial facilities, will he be enough to change his mind? These are the point. Until something changes along those lines, President Donald Trump really have no way of doing anything, and temporarily, therefore, any sort of peace talks will be shelved.
It's interesting that we're just getting some copy coming through saying that Russian officials said that they are continuing to prepare for a Trump-Putin summit and essentially disputing President Trump's assessment that it had been put on hold. The Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said a date had yet to be agreed upon and careful preparation was needed. He said a summit was the mutual desire of both presidents. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I would see this as a Russian PR exercise. It means that they're showing that they're still with Trump in some way, that the relations haven't broken, and the signaling to a sort of meeting could take place. But the meeting is quite pointless. And President Donald Trump, after all, invited President Putin to Alaska on American soil and got nowhere. So why should a trip to Hungary? Also, please note that actually getting to Hungary by President Putin is a problem. There is no easy way of getting there for him. And it's quite difficult to see how he proposes to do it, because he has got a court order against arresting him as a war criminal if he crosses any countries which accept this decree. And one of those countries is Poland, and the other one is Ukraine. So quite aspects to get to Budapest is another matter. So therefore, I think this is a PR stunt.
Meanwhile, of course, Russia just overnight has launched an intense drone and missile strike on Ukraine. At least 7 people killed, including 2 children. President Zelensky saying the attacks proved Moscow had not come under enough pressure for its continued war. Presumably, he's talking about getting US Tomahawks to attack Russia.
Yeah, well, President Zelensky is pretty consistent in this theme. He wants to win the war by removing Russia from any of the pre-2014 territory, which it now occupies. And he lives in this, he lives for this goal, just as the Russians live for the goal of conquering Ukraine. Neither is realistic at present, but President Zelensky is equally intransigent in his way, of course. He has no intention of any peace talks unless they go his way. And a ceasefire would actually be a step to things going his way, because it will take the pressure off him to agree to anything. So if you look at it vice versa from the Russian point of view, the lack of a ceasefire is essential to get Zelensky to agree. The key question is whether the Russian bombing methods of targeting civilians in order to try and sap Ukrainian morale is actually going to work in the long run, whether they might not switch their attacks to industrial and military facilities, which I think would be more productive for them. But that's obviously a tactical decision by the Russians. And in that sense, there is the attacks on Kiev, as things stand, are going to continue and on Russia on civilian targets unless either they change their strategy, the Russians, and go for nuclear military facilities and civilian industries too, or those that are supplying military arms, or he decides, President Putin, to also go elsewhere because the front line has sort of stabilized and he's got spare troops around and may want to do something else.
Well, it sounds like a puzzle wrapped in an enigma, and thanks for trying to help us sort of unravel that jigsaw. Dr. Marek Laskiewicz is the author and international affairs analyst who was talking to me on the line from London.